Over the last few weeks, I've heard from several of you who have attended Jordan Peterson's speaking tour promoting his new book, a tour featuring Dave Rubin as a guest, and I've enjoyed hearing all the good things you guys have had to say about it. With all due credit to the speakers, of course, the best piece of news I've received from the tour has nothing to do with the content of the speaking itself, but with the reaction to it. I've asked everyone I've talked to about protesters or disruptions or Antifa presence, and unanimously, all of you who have attended events in New York and Chicago and Denver and this week in Seattle have told me no, there were none. Not a peep. Just big crowds of people there to listen and ask some questions and have a good time with new like-minded friends. And those reports gave me a lot of hope. I know a lot of each week's news and a lot of what I discuss on this channel has to do with constant encroachments on liberty, whether culturally or governmentally, but in this case I thought good. Maybe at least we've succeeded in quieting the shrieking stage in the anti-free speech onslaught. Maybe we've finally moved past the Triggly-Puff era. It's not a huge victory, but relative to the last couple of years, I'll take the absence of hecklers and mob rule at speaking events as a cultural win. Just not a total win. Yet, at least, because as soon as I was relieved by what I was hearing from Peterson's tour, I see Rubin posting on Twitter about a throwback encounter with the social justice kind, a speaking event he headlined hosted by Turning Point USA at the University of New Hampshire on May 1st. It was an event that was supposed to focus on cultural appropriation in the context of Cinco de Mayo, but the only culture appropriated was that from Berkeley. Student protesters formed a blockade at the event entrance, reportedly forcing disabled and elderly attendees to scale a fence to enter the venue. Ultimately, the disruption was significant enough for campus police to move the event to a hockey arena instead. Despite shuffling the deck, the same old tricks were still in play. Right on cue with Rubin's speech, protesters interrupted to clarify any remaining ambiguity in exactly which lives matter.
Whatever you believe, if you fight for it honestly and using your mind and your faculties, and not because you silenced people or because you pulled fire alarms or called in bomb threats, if you fight for... All right, I agree. Black lives do matter. All right, I'm with you.
They ironically declared themselves not the problem while simultaneously being the night's only problem.
We are not the problem. Yeah. Do you have a question? Do you have a question? Are you guys the problem? Can't tell.
They brought makeshift noisemakers.
Oh, is that rain? Is this a local thing?
As one tweeter clarified, that's her wage gap in a can. Whatever it is, just hang on to that jar. It'll be handy in your future panhandling career. The chaos continued for the full hour, and poor Dave, his usual crowd control methods didn't work.
Hold on, guys.
How?
All right, guys.
Do you know the definition of perpetuate?
Guys.
But that's always been Dave's style, give people enough rope to hang themselves. And with Dave's generous lengths, these idiots set up a gallows that would make the Old West blush. There were two exchanges during the Q&A I thought were especially egregious and worthy of highlighting. One of Dave's points in his discussion was that hate speech, at least as a legal standard, doesn't exist. The first question of the evening came from this feisty young lady challenging that concept.
You don't believe hate speech exists.
No.
And
The Supreme Court agrees with me, by the way.
She continues to ask Dave when people will believe victims of oppression. What standard will have to be met to ditch the skepticism?
You and the rest of the people who are here with you, or who are supposed to be here with you, claim that people have a victimhood complex and everybody is just out here wanting to be a victim. What does it take for, folks on your end of the aisle to understand that people have lived experiences and who wake up every single day in this country, and they don't feel like a part of this country? And people have been spit on, and people have been threatened, and people have been told to go home to their country even though they were born in fucking New Jersey. Do I have to get lynched? Does somebody have to murder me? What will it take for it to be hate speech? And when do I actually become a victim? When I'm dead?
There's one simple word I use to describe everything I need to believe your claims. Evidence. And good for Dave, he asks for that evidence on polite, inviting terms.
So tell me about your oppression. Tell me about what you're dealing with and how the government can fix it. It doesn't mean that bad people don't exist, but tell me about your oppression. Maybe we can work through something.
And her response is, how dare you ask me for emotional and intellectual labor? I don't work for free, so pay me.
I have no reason to sit and talk about my own oppression because that's just mental energy.
Well,
unless I'm going to be paid to talk about my...
And Dave literally digs through his pockets to offer her the cash he has.
Yeah, why don't you PayPal me?
Yeah, well, let me see what I can do here.
Venmo me.
I got $20. I will pay you. I will pay you.
But still not good enough, and all she has is saying that Dave's Jewish ancestors are rolling in their graves because Dave doesn't want to criminalize hate speech.
You are gay and you are Jewish, correct?
Yeah.
You know,
That's
your ancestors are rolling in their grave. That's what I can tell you right now.
Yeah, my ancestors who died in the genocide are rolling in their grave.
And of course, this exchange wouldn't be complete without outright denials and direct contradictions. She says she never claimed to be oppressed, and she says she's been nothing but respectful to Dave.
Nowhere in what I have said have I claimed I'm oppressed, so you just put those words in my mouth.
Right.
I have not said a single thing about your personal character up until this point.
Yeah, except for the part where you previously referenced your oppression.
I have no reason to sit and talk about my own oppression.
And the part where you told him his ancestors are ashamed of his character. And she grandstanded about her studies to close.
I just want to let you know that I am a double major and I do research for actual organizations.
I assume neither of those majors are intellectual consistency. Now, I hope she didn't shatter your mind to pieces, because your brain is going to have to bend just a little bit more. A second questioner asks Dave about his deference to the Supreme Court, an institution that has previously made some bad decisions.
You said earlier on that the Supreme Court had ruled that hate speech was not a thing. But we know the Supreme Court also ruled for Plessy Ferguson, they ruled for Dred Scott, and they ruled for a ton of things that pretty much put people of color and people of color across the United States in jeopardy. They've made us feel like we're second-class citizens. When you talk about the Supreme Court saying that we don't, that there's no such thing as what do you call it again? As hate speech, it doesn't make any sense because the Supreme Court has no moral standing if they've been moving things that are wrong.
But Dave's argument isn't if the Supreme Court says it, it's automatically right. Dave's argument is that the Supreme Court has said hate speech is not restricted by the First Amendment because hate speech is an inherently subjective concept, and the First Amendment means nothing if it doesn't protect a minority's right to offend. To the second point on the specific cases, Dred Scott predated the 13th and 14th Amendments. It's no longer good law. Plessy v. Ferguson later established the doctrine of separate but equal for public facilities, replaced with the doctrine of separate but equal is inherently unequal in Brown v. Board more than 60 years ago. The decisions he referenced are bad decisions, but they're also no longer good law. And what overturned those bad decisions? The broader concepts of freedom and equal protection of law that formed the basis for this country. Was America perfect at its founding? No, of course not. But the concepts on which it was founded created the most free society the world has ever seen, for people of color included. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, or the quarters out with the wage gap jar. In response, Dave pivots to what we ought to discuss: modern society, asking the questioner if he can name a law that applies to him differently as a racial minority.
I think the basic thing in this room right now is that we have people like you who go around talking about things they have no clue about.
Ironic.
What law do we have that is against you that's not against me?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? So, for example, there was a case of a student athlete, two student athletes that had a rape case. One was black and one was white. One got 3 months in sentence, the other one got 18 years. So that shows you the one who got 18 years was black and the one who got 3 months was white.
Without specific reference, I tried to look up the cases he's talking about, and since he doesn't give any information beyond student athletes and their races and rape convictions and their sentences, I have to speculate, but here's what I think he means. The white student getting 3 months, I'm fairly certain, is Brock Turner, the famous case of the Stanford swimmer who sexually assaulted a young woman behind a dumpster, controversially sentenced to 6 months in jail, released after 3 on good behavior. The second case I'm a lot less certain about, but this is the only recent case of a student athlete facing 18 years in prison for a rape conviction that I can find. Former Cerritos College football player Keyshawn Holmes awaiting sentencing scheduled for May 2nd. Now, of course, the variables in these two cases go well beyond race. They both happened in the same state of California, but there are different facts in each case, different juries, different judges. Holmes hasn't even been sentenced yet, so we shouldn't say that he got 18 years for his conviction. That's the maximum sentence, and the sentence hasn't even been decided yet. But beyond that, there's one crucial remaining distinction in that Holmes case. It is his second rape case. He previously pled guilty to rape after he was accused of sexually assaulting 2 different underage girls in 2013. He himself was also a minor, but 17 at the time. To treat race as the only distinguishing variable between these 2 cases ignores the facts and is dishonest. To close, the mob makes Dave promise that his crowd won't commit any acts of violence against them.
I hope perhaps that I changed some of your minds, and perhaps some of those guys changed your minds. And either way, it's all good. As long as we don't walk out of here at each other's throats and hurting each other, then it's actually, yeah. I don't sense that any of these calm people. All right, I'll grant you that, guys. Guys, we're not going to create any acts of violence against any of these people here tonight.
And that's really the greatest delusion, isn't it? The idea that everybody who's just there to listen to a speaker and to share some thoughts and to have a good time, that they're all so fixated on you that their post-event plans include violently targeting you. You ruined their event and they're still not going to target you. If your aim is to be left alone by these calm, peaceful people, try leaving them alone. Being left alone is what everyone wants anyhow. To say they hate you implies they have some obsessive concern with you. They don't. They want you to be you, and they just want to be left alone so that they can be them. Anyway, it was a fun listen, and I thank Dave for continuing to fight the good fight. You can find the full video using the link below. And even though it's a spectacle and nonsense to behold, it doesn't actually concern me very much. I view this as some of the final twitches of a soon-to-be corpse, not any sign of resuscitation. These antics don't convert anybody new to their side. They just cause a few more people to Google the Rubin report and to find some great minds they haven't heard from before. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it.